Yeah. Mhm.
All right. One more minute, guys,
Mhm.
and then we'll be live.
So Kelly, then do you want to make the announcement that since we don't have a quorum, we're not going to have a formal meeting, but we'll just have the presentation? Or do you want me to do that?
If you could do that, that'd be great.
Sure.
I'm just going to shut my mic off. And then we'll roll into it.
Mhm. Okay. All right. I've got 6:45. Everybody have that? Okay. All right. Are we live now, Dan? We good? Okay. All right. This was supposed to be the December 16th Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting. Unfortunately, tonight we do not have a quorum of board members, so it's not going to be a formal meeting as published. Oh, wait a minute. I think we might have a quorum.
I'm here.
Okay. Beth made it.
I'm not too long, but I'm here.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
So
Fantastic. Well, then I'm going to turn it over to you, Kelly, because now we have a quorum, so we can roll.
Okay. So you're with us, Beth?
I'm here.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. So let me go ahead. So let me call the Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting for December 16th to order. So it's 6:46. And please note the members that are in attendance. So now we need to approve the meeting minutes from our last meeting, which was October 14th, 2020. I'm sure everybody got a copy of that last month. So would anybody entertain a motion to approve the minutes? Anybody?
Control D will unmute you if you're not sure.
I typed them, but I'll move to approve them.
It'll work.
And
Okay.
I was not in attendance, but I will second that approval.
Okay, so we have, a motion to approve and a second. Is there any discussion that we need to go through with those minutes? All right, if not, so then all in favor of approval, please signify your approval with your thumbs up. And I can see Beth. That's okay. I'm assuming you approve the minutes since you wrote them down.
I do.
All right, so there we go. So I'm going to go ahead as far as new business and send that over to Lorena.
Okay. You mean the unfinished business?
Unfinished business. I apologize.
Okay. All right. So we've got Brian Lubenow and Justin. Justin, how do you pronounce your last? It's just Heil.
Yep. Yes, Heil.
With CDM Smith, with CDM Smith, the city's engineering firm, and they've been working on Ballinger Park and the development of that land. So I'll turn it over to them for presentation and discussion of what they've got so far, and then we can go over our ideas and questions.
Great, thanks, Lorena. We've been looking forward to this to go over this the preliminary plan and have some discussion about some of the concepts that were floated in the October meeting that we heard about, and just get additional feedback from the board. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and show the plan here in a moment. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. I should have this open. I'll get there eventually. I'm sorry about that. I should have had these all open ahead of time. Ugh. Concept plan with ideas. That's the one I have open. Justin, do you have it open by any chance?
Yes, I believe I do. Yep. Let me share my screen.
Thought I had it open here.
Okay. Share. Can everyone see?
There we go.
Yep.
Okay. All right, Brian, do you want to?
Yeah, I guess I'll go a bit further and then pass it off to you. What we've done here is enhance the concept that was developed a couple years ago, and I'll just note a couple of those enhancements. So what remains from the original is the parking off of Fringer Road with the main access, and then the future road, which would be in a future phase, to the secondary parking area by the future observatory building. The trail loop remains much the same as we had in the original. What we've tried to do is highlight there's a couple of vista areas that we've pointed out. One being kind of overlooking the creek in that area, and the other one on a little small loop right next to the creek, kind of near where the tributary comes in from Route 194. The other change that I'll point out is it's staying completely on this side of that small drainage that runs on the south side of the property. The loop used to go across there just barely and come back. So rather than add those two drainage crossings, we made the decision with consultation with Lorena to keep it on this side of the north side of that drainage. What you'll see, there's a couple of those circles that you see around some trees. Those are large specimen trees that were identified by the CLSI, who's the Forest Conservation Plan preparer. They were, large species trees, specimen trees that were identified in their forest conservation or their forest conservation plan and were surveyed and then picked up in the survey. So we've worked the proposed trail around those trees, and we've also tried to incorporate the existing trail that runs through the property, kind of in the area that Justin's showing you there. It's the existing, I'll say maybe 6 to 7 foot wide trail that was developed from the neighboring property to reach the farm, the pasture land, the farmland, where it's recently been had the trees planted. So there is a path that runs through that area, and we've done our best to maintain that path to the degree that we could. I think I'll pause there and turn it over to Justin to see if he has anything else he'd like to add.
I would say one of the things that I tried to do with tweaking the trail layout also was to start to integrate the existing topography. So we're avoiding excessively steep slopes to try and minimize any grading that would have to occur. And then I think this was noted when we sent the revised plan out, was this idea for a potential ramble trail, which is basically just a meandering trail that would just kind of loop in on itself. You can kind of see it here dashed in, and I wanted to make sure that it was very potential. It's just an idea I had, and I guess this jumps into what we were sent with some potential ideas that you guys had sent over our way with an apiary, pollinator garden, hidden path, maze, sculpture garden area. And I wanted to really feature those areas. And I thought when looking at it, it would be best if some of those areas, not necessarily the apiary per se, or I mean, these rest stations make sense to spread out throughout, but I think that the hidden maze, sculpture garden, even some of the native meadow area would might be best closer to the main parking area for a few reasons. I guess firstly is if people are coming to the park to visit the sculpture garden or the maze or whatever, they may not want to walk the I forget what it is, half a mile or so to get down if it's located on the far edge of the park area. It's also important to keep it closer to the parking lot for security purposes. It's easier to check in on if there's anything suspicious going on. It's easy for local law enforcement or whomever to drive in here or drive down this pathway and be able to see visually what's going on here. I know you can see out here from Fringer Road maybe and from some of the other areas, but it's far away. It's just always the more eyes and the easier the visibility is, the safer the location will be in general. So that's kind of where this ramble came from, is that it kind of creates little pockets here that you could highlight. You know, you could have your sculpture garden here, a little maze area here. You could have like a native sort of sensory garden type of area in here, and that would play off of our main pathway that's still connected into the trail system that was in the main concept plan. And this could be just a very small, minimal trail, just natural material, and that doesn't necessarily have to be whatever the main trail surfacing is, which leads into another, I guess, talking point would be the planned surfacing for this trail. I know there's discussion of a rubberized surfacing, and I just wanted to, I guess, hear what the reasoning was, why you were thinking that would be a good surfacing for the area. I'm not sure if you have any specific reasons that you would like that. I'm just curious, because there's numerous different options that we can do throughout the system here.
Well, I think that the rubberized trail came around. We knew we didn't want to go with the engineer wood fiber or mulch. We wanted to make it completely ADA friendly, accessible as possible. And various vendors had reached out to us, and I know Daryl had received some emails and had sent them on to me from vendors who, work with the rubberized trail material. And so I did reach out to several of the vendors who work in our area and got estimates on that. It really comes, I mean, we were either going to go in that direction if we could swing that fiscally, or go with asphalt. And honestly, when the estimates came back for both of those options, there's a $50,000 difference. Mm-hmm. So I am going to be applying for several grants so that we can get some funding for the preferred rubberized trail. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes through. But we definitely don't want to go with the mulch. I know that would be cheaper. But
right.
in the long run, we decided we wanted something more permanent, more stable, and more ADA friendly.
Right. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that versus mulch material. And that makes sense to comply to the ADA accessibility issues. And I guess the only other material that comes to mind besides asphalt or rubberized material would be like a decomposed granite surface, because that kind of gives you a natural look. But they have mixtures that have sort of a adhesive polymer that would bond the stone together if you're worried about permanence. And I know those align with ADA compliance. ADA compliance is kind of vague with trail surfacing.
Yeah.
But I know, I mean, it's used a lot of urban plazas, pathways, things like that. I'll use decomposed granite. I'm not sure. I'd have the pricing. I'd have to check on that to see what that would be. But I know it's relatively competitive and low maintenance, minimal if any maintenance. But I just want to throw that out there as another possibility.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
And just to confirm, is the intent that the entire pathway system would all be ADA accessibly compliant? Is that correct?
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, even the Vista trails. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that up, Brian, because I meant to ask that as well, because we'll have to, as we dig deeper into this, we'll have to make sure we're aligned, because the topography, the grading of it will be they have that clearly defined of the requirements. So we'll have to keep an eye on that as we look into the alignment.
Right.
Yeah, and what Justin's kind of getting at there is, likely the disturbed path, the width of disturbance to create the path especially in steeper areas, is likely to grow to meet the side slopes and the cross slopes on the path that are necessary, especially. So it's certainly doable. It's just something that we need to, needs to be engineered a bit more finely, and may expand the limit of disturbance, which just means maybe cutting down more trees, and it's just a bigger impact. Just want to make sure that that's clear.
Right. So the pathway is proposed for 6 foot width. The area of disturbance to put in the rubberized trail is 7 feet. They need the extra space on either side, obviously, to do their grading and such, get the material in.
It'll likely, just because of you might be dealing with some existing grade that's has a slope that's different than what's necessary to meet ADA. You may have to expand that further in certain areas to get a relatively flat cross section. So you may end up being wider than that. Just wanted to make you aware of that.
Okay.
It might need to be wider, not for them to put the surface in, but to level an area to put an acceptable cross slope in.
Right, and to tie it in. So I mean, I'm not saying this is an issue area, but it just kind of looks like it. So we might have to pull, because these contours are spaced a little closely together. We might have to start to pull them apart, basically, to create a more level surface as you're going downhill here. And as you pull them back, you have to tie it into the into existing conditions, but you also don't want to create a drainage situation where you're creating a swale or like a waterway going down your pathway,
Right.
which would create washout at the bottom of it.
Well, while you've got it zoomed right in on that, I did want to ask you if we could bypass going down on that loop. Can we just kind of take the trail and kind of avoid going around those two big specimen trees? That hairpin turn right there. The vendors that actually came out to look at the proposed area say that that one big tree at the turn, the roots are so far out in order to get past them. Obviously it might even damage the tree if they have to cut into it to get the path constructed as designed there. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's certainly, that's not a critical piece of the design. I think the idea is just there's I guess the flow and the stream coming down, so it'd kind of be a nice place to loop around. But no, there's no reason we can't just tie in more directly.
I think if we could, that would definitely might save a little money, and it would definitely save all of the hacking of the tree roots and all of that. So.
Yep. Yeah. No, I'm all for saving trees.
Yeah.
Okay, that gives me a better idea.
And if I can just back up 1 second, Justin, if you could switch back to that plan that showed the concepts, the ideas from, yes, exactly. So some of what we're looking at there, I just want to be clear that we're talking about the right area. So I guess everything that's shown there is hatched in the black ink. That's all within, sort of more within like the phase 2 area. And I know that there's a plan to develop where the writing actually was, but that's, what are we considering that, like a phase 3? Is that correct?
Well, I think we are leasing that to a local farmer until I think it was 2025.
I see.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe in the future, but I don't know. There aren't any plans for it that I know of, within that time frame or thereafter.
I just was curious if we should be considering that at all in the long range picture, but it sounds to me like that maybe not.
The other question that I had, as far as the Ramble Trail and incorporating some of the ideas that we had, I can see like the meditation or sculpture, garden, and if there was a maze area, those would be okay in the wooded area. But as far as a pollinator garden, I'm just concerned with the tree cover, maybe some lack of sunlight there. And I think that's why we chose that area. Plus we wanted a relatively large area, and the area that was selected was about 2 acres. So we would really be diminishing a pollinator garden if we put it into the woods up there by the Ramble Trail.
I agree. I guess this is good. It gives more clarity about what the pollinator garden was meant to be, whether it was meant for more user experience and like education, or if it was meant for more of a large scale functioning area. And it makes sense. It does make sense to put that next to the apiary, obviously. And the apiary is important to be accessible to some water. So I guess down here would also make sense. It's closer to the stream, and if there's any water here. And obviously you don't necessarily want that right next to where people would be.
Right. And we liked the idea of having the buffer of the large area of the pollinator garden between, I guess, people viewing it and, and the flowers, having it backed up against that creek bed, we thought was an ideal location because hopefully people won't be trampling through the wildflowers to do whatever. And that way the bees would be protected and people there wouldn't hopefully be that much of a risk of anybody, getting stung or anything like that. We try to keep it distanced from the public, from visitors.
Right. I do see your concern about people hopefully not trampling, but going over to see it. And I could see that, envision that happening easily, or potentially with, everything's in bloom and it's like you said, 2 acres of native flowers blooming and it's looking amazing. And
right.
Naturally, everyone's going to meander off this trail and want to go take a closer look, but hopefully in a sensitive way.
Yeah. I like on this plan, I like the way the trail is shaped, how it comes down from the main entrance parking lot and goes down, through the woods. It's a little straighter, just up at the beginning there where you had changed it to kind of curve around those 2 specimen trees. And the idea of people actually trying to get to the gardens without having to walk the whole trail or whatever. Ideally, once we get the secondary parking lot or the observatory parking lot finished, people would probably just drive down there, I would think. Now, I noticed that you didn't have a connector trail on the revised concept from that observatory parking. Oh, there it is. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, it's just under phase 2, I believe, right? Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, I see it. Okay, so that would be helpful as well. If people just want to see the pollinator garden or whatever, they want to park there and then just take the shortcut if they want to stay on the trail.
I do have a question, if you don't mind. How many parking spots are in the first lot and then the second lot?
I believe each one has 12 spaces.
Yeah. Yes. And I did get some updated cost estimates on all of that, all of the paving, the phase 1 entrance and parking lot, and then the observatory parking lot and that connector road between the 2 lots. So we know what we're looking at there.
So I guess my question is, if the parking had to be expanded, could it be expanded? Because with phase 1, with just 12 spaces, especially when the park first, quote, opens up, it's going to be 12 spaces are going to go very quickly. But as we go down the road on this, nice walking path and that type of thing, I'm just a little worried about the amount of spaces, maybe not initially, but down the road.
We do have an area that's lightly dashed in here that we're calling out as overflow parking area, 12 spaces. So I suppose that could be added in if it's deemed necessary, and you can simply just put down stone, some crushed stone or gravel, and create parking spaces, and then eventually you can use that as your base and pave right on it, and expand
whether
that
that's
to
stone,
24.
Yeah, whether it's stone or it's just seated and reinforced in some way that you can have overflow parking here and there. That's exactly what was envisioned for that. Those peak times when you needed more, but we didn't want to be spending all the money on the pavement and also having all that impervious area that we had to provide stormwater management for. So thought that was a good kind of compromise of the 2.
And then for phase 2, this parking lot, as you can see, there's ample room or expansion. I mean, we could, we could call it out or show it larger if there's expectations that people might be parking here to access over to the main loop. This can certainly be expanded.
Thanks.
Welcome. So I guess the next topic that we could jump into is related. Brian might be able to talk more in depth on this, to the forest conservation easements and the condition of the current reforestation planting area that I believe the local community did adjacent to the forest conservation easement area. But again, I think Brian might have a little more background knowledge on this
Sure.
history.
Sure. Yeah. So there are forest conservation areas across the creek, across Piney Creek over there, that aren't really impacting this project at all. But there is another area on our side, and it's kind of located. Yeah, it's on the other. Again, it's on the other side of where the trail is straight there, coming up that drainage. If you just pan down a little bit, Justin, that area, like right where it says 6 foot wide pathway, that text, that area is covered under forest conservation. The area that I'm still trying to figure out is the area near the top of his screen there, where that trail network goes back to Vista Overlook 2. When I contacted the county, they said there was not a forest conservation easement for that area, but if you go out there and walk there, right where that intersection is, right in the middle of the screen, there's that 3-way intersection. There's signage there that says Carroll County Forest Conservation Area. So that's something we need to follow up with the county on, because I know they have pretty strict rules of what you can and cannot do within a conservation area. So I'd certainly like to be able to get back into that area and feature it. And I think we can do so without disturbing too many trees. But that's an area where more disturbance is going to be, potentially some hurdles that we'd have to jump over. So I'm going to continue to try to figure that out. And I think what's probably best is a site visit with the county, with Jonathan Bowman with the county who administers that program. Mm-hmm. And I know we also wanted to get his thoughts on the area that's listed as the reforested area. And that was the community project to plant that area. And I know when Lorena and Jim and I visited that, I guess about a year ago now, there were a lot of trees in there that had blown over, some that had died, some that were kind of being choked out by the tubes that they were planted in. So there was definitely some work needed to get that area cleaned up and to let the living trees that remain to thrive. And I was hoping that maybe Jonathan Bowman could help guide the city on how that could happen best.
I'm going to jump in here, Brian, real quick. Jim and Jonathan and I did meet out there.
Oh, awesome.
We did, yeah, and we took a look at those, and with a couple of our public works guys as well. And so he did give us some information, some suggestions and tips. So we are going to be working on that as we can, area by area, since it is kind of a large swath there, to get those trees situated, the ones that have been pushed over, knocked over, the ones that are being choked out by brambles and whatnot. So we'll get all that squared away over some time. Don't really have an exact timeline at this point, but that is on our radar. And when we mentioned the path going through some of the forest conservation area, he said that that the county would be happy to work with us on an ADA accessible path, that there was some flexibility there. So that was encouraging.
Oh, excellent. That's good. Thank you for the update. That's great. I'm just going to look back at my list here of things that I know we wanted to talk about.
Site security. You were going to talk about site security, I guess.
Yes, thank you. That's a good point. This was something that I know I discussed with the previous Parks and Rec director, and was a concern of the neighbors, and how would this be gated at the entrance? Do we want cameras? Would the gate be opened and closed in some way daily by the city or the police department, or how all that would look? Those are things that we don't necessarily need to have answers for now, but just items to be thinking about. So I don't know if anybody has any initial thoughts.
I don't believe that it needs to be gated. I don't believe so. But if there are any members out there that have a discussion in regards to that, I'd love to hear it.
I think the park should run just like the others. It's to dusk or something, whatever the rules are. People are pretty good about that. I mean, there's a little bit of tension about this park when it first came online.
Right.
There's concerns, and those are very important to the city. That we've been thinking about that, and sort of work with our neighbors. But I just think it should be like any other park.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I think if we put a gate there, then the burden falls on whomever, staff member, whether it's me or a public works guy or a police officer, to open it up first thing in the morning and then close it up at night. So I agree that it should fall in with the rest of our parks.
Okay, that makes sense. And as far as lighting, to go along with that, any thoughts on that?
As long as we keep the lighting to a minimum, not only for the neighbors, but for the observatory itself. Now, I know the entrance may not be as much of an issue, taking into consideration the observatory's need for dark skies because of all the trees that come between them. I don't know how everybody else feels about that. Do we want stronger lighting for security there at the entrance?
I
And
don't
that's
necessarily
going to keep
agree
us down.
with that, yeah. I don't think we need strong. Yeah.
So some minimal site lighting at the entrance and the parking lot.
I think minimal site lighting, which would work on top of eventually to have cameras attached to for the entrance.
Yeah, definitely cameras. I think that's something that we've all agreed we need more of in the parks.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments or any questions for them while they're here? Was there any more to discuss, gentlemen?
The only other item that we didn't hit on that had on our list here was just, I guess, having a little more discussion about these areas that were initially on the concept plan and that have stayed on here for invasive species removal and miscellaneous debris removal. Just more, I guess, a little more clarity. Brian gave me a little background that it's been sort of used as a illegal dumping area for quite some time here, and I guess up here as well. But we'll have to give some direction, I guess, thinking down the line to the contractor who eventually will be hopefully awarded this project, about what the expectations are or what the limits are and things like that.
Yeah, in all honesty, that's a carryover from the original concept plan that was developed, I don't know, a decade ago. Jim might be able to provide a little more detail there, but a long time ago, that had that note on it. So it's carried over since then. I don't know if that area has, as far as invasive species, is any more impacted than other wooded areas in the area. I didn't get that impression when I walked through it, but I'm sure there are invasives that could be, you could try to deal with them.
Well, I've got a question about that. When we're talking about removal of invasive species, I mean, are we talking about something that goes beyond what it would take to clear and prep the area for the trail?
Yeah, in concept, it's working your way. I mean, to me, what the note refers to is working your way through the wooded area and clearing out selected species, or invasive species, and we'd have to give more direction and quantify that for the contractor. But yes, it would be outside of the limit of disturbance for the path itself.
It seems to me that we can synchronize these two things and maybe have it within a 10-foot offset of the edge of the roadway for phase 2 or something like that. So they're not going through this whole area, obviously.
Okay.
That seems that
would be monumental.
Yeah, and it's not the point of the project, right? So it's just kind of giving you guys a more of a fresh start when you put in these new pathways and roads and features and everything, knowing that unfortunately invasives don't know boundaries or things like that. So
Right.
Anybody else have any questions? Are you good?
So you're talking about, oh, sorry.
No, you're fine.
So you're talking about preliminary site plan submission to the Planning Commission?
Yeah, so as far as how the project would have to progress through the Planning Commission, right, that would be the next step. This is a site plan through their process. So we would have to prepare, erosion sediment control plans and a preliminary grading plan, the forest conservation plan, the work that that CLSI did to identify those species trees that would need to follow to the next step to prepare the forestation plan. So all of that would get started, and then it would be submitted through the city planning commission, but then it also gets reviewed by all of the county agencies, grading, landscape. Everyone would see it initially.
Does this have to go through a technical review with the county?
That's a good point. Yes, it would have to go through the technical review committee process.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. On the before you draw up the whole set for formal submission, are you going to be adding the pollinator garden and the other items that we had talked about, like the pocket parks along the trail? Those all of the features, basically.
Well, Yeah, I'll go first and Justin, go ahead and jump in. But I mean, I don't think we want to get, it's a preliminary plan. And in all honesty, like the county review agencies that I'm just mentioned, that's not something that they're going to be honing in on. You know, they're more concerned about grading and erosion and sediment control and the forest plan and so forth, and that we're following all those proper requirements. I think some of those details can follow later, but definitely like the location of the pollinator garden, those key use areas, I think we would want to show now. So yeah, Justin, I don't know if you have anything to add.
That's what I was going to say. Is I think from my understanding of what we've discussed, it's pretty minimal changes that can occur in just showing the general areas for some of these features. We don't need to get into the weeds on some of the design of them yet, because like Brian said, that the county might not be honed in on that, but I think we can certainly show them.
So other than the change near that that tight turn right there that we discussed, and certainly showing the pollinator garden and the apiary use over there, are there any other specific changes that we should be showing?
Well, Kelly, Beth, Emmanuel, Daryl, how do you all feel about the little sculpture garden and whatnot being along that ramble trail as opposed to the other area that we thought about adjacent to the pollinator garden? What are your thoughts on that?
So I definitely hear Brian's concerns and or his ideas about it being more secure near the entrance and people wanting to get there. I guess in my head, like, I don't know. I can see both sides. I think I'm torn.
And I mean, as far as where it goes, I mean, I guess these gentlemen would know best, I guess, where it should go. We definitely want the pollinator garden, and I don't want another trail being too close to that. So we'll figure out what the safest and easiest access for, for our residents to go through. Whatever works.
And I guess sticking to that thought of, what is the county concerned about now? Those really aren't major items to be that they're going to be too concerned about at this phase of the planning process outside of your board. So I think getting the alignment of the trail is something we want to have nailed down, but exactly what features and what details go where, I don't know how critical that is at this juncture. I guess my only other thought on that is any disturbance in the forested area will result in additional area that we need to cover in an afforestation plan. So we don't want to be disturbing too much area. And I don't know if they don't really look at like, well, how many trees are you disturbing? It's more like what area are you disturbing that's in an area that's considered wooded. So that's those are my thoughts.
I'm going to pass along Bill's in his email that he sent me today. He actually stated that his thoughts on the sculpture garden. The possibility of a sculpture garden somewhere on the top loop near the observatory, which would straddle the main path. So that falls in line with what you're proposing over near the ramble path, so that it's seen right on the trail, and it's closer to the upper parking lot and such. The idea about the nooks or pocket parks along the trail was that they were going to kind of be themed. So some would have benches, some would have little sculptures in them, or what have you. Some whimsical stuff, or whatever for interest, points of interest. So is that going to be repetitive to have like a sculpture garden that's up closer to the trailhead as opposed to a separate area that's down adjacent to the wildflower garden or the pollinator garden? I don't know. What are everybody's thoughts on that? And again, yeah, that's something that we can discuss later on. We're going to have plenty of time. And if it's not something that the planning commission or the county is going to need to see on the plans, then, that's something we can settle on later.
I'm actually even wondering, as you're talking about those, if they're pocket, they're small, maybe that's not something that even shows up on the plan that the contractor is building, right? Like that's maybe something that the city follows up later, and in a certain small little area, I'm talking like, a 10 by 30-foot area.
Oh, I wasn't even thinking that big. And yeah, okay. I was thinking that's something that we can do with our right. Public Works department, although they're going to love to hear that, just to go in and clear some of the brush, or whatever, just, like a little sitting area, put some things on the trees or whatever, just to make a little point of interest there. So, and the surface would just be, the natural surface, the packed earth, where we're not going to be disturbing anything there or paving anything. So that doesn't have to be part and parcel of the contract. No.
Yeah, and that's where I think that this bramble trail and this kind of meandering path area sort of lends itself to future enhancements like that. Probably if you try to capture that on a site plan, it just makes things more complicated, and
right.
Maybe that's just something that gets developed kind of organically as time goes along.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
So then, I guess what's your timeline then? What are you thinking?
Well, I know I need to talk to CLSI because they have a component here. Jim shared the planning commission schedule with me. I think he mentioned something as, I gotta go find that email again here. Submittal of the as late as the 19th potentially. I think I need to spend a little more time. I hadn't thought about the technical review committee meeting, so thank you, Lorena, for bringing that up. Jim, I don't know if you can have any insight in how that necessarily has to or doesn't have to line up with the planning commission meeting, or actually, am I wrong there? Since this is in the city, does the TRC not apply?
Yeah, I was thinking TRC may not apply because we did.
You're right. Oh, okay.
Oops.
I think we lost you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't think we have to go to the TRC because it is within city limits.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so
oh, great. Okay.
So whether we can get this pulled together by the 19th, I'm not sure, but I would say, certainly at the latest, the February meeting, it would be presented to the planning commission.
Okay, you had said before that we could possibly have shovels in the ground late spring. Do you have an update on that? What's your expectation on that?
Well, that doesn't sound too reasonable at this point. But I will add that the bidding process takes some time, and if you're willing to let some of the local permitting process play out concurrent with the bidding process, you can save some time. I don't want to commit to any dates right now without kind of thinking that all through and talking to CLSI, but I see that as an opportunity to shave some time off.
Right.
'Cause
Well,
if you wait for
I'm sorry.
final,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, if you wait for final plan approval, then you've got a 4-week bid period, and then a couple weeks to get the contract figured out with the contractor, and then a couple months or a month to get some kind of them get it on their schedule. All of a sudden, you're in August. So
Okay. The reason I ask is just because of some of these grant timelines. A couple of them, and this is if we get them all, but a couple of them, March, June, that gives us plenty of time. But one of them is November. And as you know, you can't really, proceed on a project until you've officially been authorized to do so if you are awarded the grant. But that portion could just apply to the latter portion of the trail or, another facet of the project.
right.
So. Yeah, I did up a spreadsheet based on the estimates that I've received in preparing for these grants, and I'm not going to go over all of it, but I don't want to give anybody sticker shock, but between phase one and phase one required, as we see here, and then phase one desired, meaning, our little pocket parks and the pollinator garden and sculpture garden and such. Phase two, just the connector road to the observatory, the stormwater, electric, the parking lot, all that kind of stuff. We're looking at almost $1 million for the park development, $982,000 actually. So, our best case scenario with grant funding would, if we're awarded all of these grants, would be $528,000. So that's pretty good for the grant money, and that leaves us with a balance of $453,000. It would take to cover the complete development of what we envisioned here.
We're probably at a point where we will need to revisit this with the mayor and council, because the numbers we're talking about now far exceed the initial budget estimates for the Bollinger Park project. So, obviously the scope of the project has grown substantially with some of the recommendations, and the cost seems to be increasing greatly compared with the initial engineering estimates from just from the very rough concept that we had a few years ago. I think trail material certainly contributes a lot to that, from going to a more natural type of trail to a paved surface. Certainly increases the cost dramatically. But, these kind of numbers are something that we're going to have to take back to the mayor and council as we move forward with the site plan. We don't want to, get a site plan approved with all of these features and details and far exceed the budgeted amounts. And, and then here we've invested all this effort and money into a plan that we're not going to be able to afford to build. So, Daryl, that's your cue to keep that in mind for council reports next month. And I'm sure Lorena will include stuff in her monthly report. So we'll just want to make sure that mayor and council are on board with this kind of an expense. Keeping in mind that grant applications can go in to defray, to offset some of the cost to the city. But we really are going to have those conversations pretty soon.
Okay, so does that stall the whole process of even starting the park, or can we go on smaller, like, sections? It's just like entrance, and then, I mean, what would you recommend, Jim, as far as how we should proceed?
I think and Justin or Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we were to go with even if we went with like the decomposed granite type trail surface, we would still be considering that impervious, I would imagine, because it's going to be compacted and, water's not going to perk through it. But I don't know what kind of stormwater management impact that might have. If we move forward with a preliminary plan and develop the stormwater management plan, if the type of material for the trail will have a big impact on the stormwater plan.
I think because there's so much natural area surrounding it. First of all, yeah, I agree. I think it would be impervious. That's my interpretation. That as the city's stormwater reviewer, if somebody else was doing this, that's the way we would interpret it. But with all the natural area around there and the new stormwater regulations, I think a lot of that could be, handled with runoff to natural areas and preserving natural drainage directions. And I don't think it would have a big cost impact. I think what I'm seeing as the biggest change would be the potential grading needs associated with meeting ADA slopes on the trail and providing, I don't know those regulations it's been a while since I've looked at them, but if you're at a certain slope for a certain amount of time, you have to provide safety benches every so often. And it's just something that we'd have to get into that a bit more. So I see that as the biggest, potential change. Like if we went to all that effort of figuring out the grades for all of the site, and then we decided, oh, no, we only want a smaller portion to be ADA compliant. That's where I could see some rework. Justin, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I would agree that verifying the limits of ADA accessibility compliance really helps steer our alignment and design, and that would be something that would be tough to alter as we progress. I was just trying to think of how, since we have these two separate phases going on, if there's a way that we can tweak our phase one design. Maybe, I don't know if having this pathway up here and this ramble and this whole, I mean, we're straightening this anyways to avoid the hairpin and that large tree. I don't know if it would be an acceptable potential solution if we, in phase one, have the trail basically follow what would be phase two roadway, and then just have it tie in this way and just basically scrap this if cost is a serious prohibitive factor, because then you are kind of overlapping your phases. So it would minimize the work that would have to happen in phase two, because you would already have cleared all this. And then if there is sufficient funding, you could add in this northern trail here. But that way, during phase one, you could provide access to this main loop. And again, maybe this is phased later, depending on funding to this overlook area, because this is a lot of surfacing to get out to this overlook area, because this wasn't previously in the concept. So that would be another area, I guess, that we could look at. I'm just trying to think of strategies and ways you can phase it to try and save.
So I guess, Jim, my next question is, I guess we would have to, discuss the plans with the mayor and council next month for sure, before we even proceed forward. Am I correct in that? And get their recommendations as to how we proceed?
I mean, we have a certain amount that has been budgeted for the
Right.
initial phase of the project. So if we want to keep the plan moving, we may need to develop it in smaller phases if the mayor and council aren't necessarily on board with the additional expenditure at this point. But, you know, maybe we make phase one, you know, take a smaller bite of the apple, and we make phase one a little bit smaller. Or, and this is something I guess more for the advisory board to think about. While certainly the idea of a fully accessible trail is wonderful, I think we could also entertain perhaps a smaller loop closer to the parking area that would be accessible, you know, so that someone who, you know, who's not able to, you know, hike a steeper slope or maybe the full trail could still, you know, enjoy a smaller loop. And maybe that's where some of the amenities like the sculpture garden and, you know, some of those, you know, things that will develop over time, you know, could still be enjoyed closer to the parking area. And then, you know, the portions of the trail where we have more slope issues to deal with, you know, may not be accessible. And I think, Justin, I guess I'll put you on the spot a little bit. I guess you have, you know, more of the parks expertise, but you mentioned that ADA regs and trails, I think, are a bit fuzzy. So I don't know if, you know, with it being a brand new trail, what our obligation as far as ADA is, if we, you know, if we're required to make it all accessible.
I would have to confirm this, so take this with a grain of salt. But I believe it's if it's going to a like a feature or an amenity, you would need to provide an accessible route. But if so for the sculpture garden, the maze or whatever, I think that would be true. But if we're just saying it's a like a large looping trail and there's no you know, feature or amenity or what have you that it's leading to, I don't believe it's required. But again, I would need to ask some of my colleagues or look into it myself. But that's my understanding. Because I mean, otherwise, and you couldn't do you know, new trail systems in sloped areas at all without huge disturbances.
Yeah. And that's been a question mark for us, I think, throughout this whole process. Obviously, you know, those of us who do some outdoor activities, you know, you go to a state park and you take a hike and you're going up and down slopes, and cross slopes are all over the place, and we're, you know, stepping over logs that are, you know, diverting runoff and things like that. Yet I'm sure many of those trails existed long before ADA regs were in place. So the whole question of compliance with a brand new, you know, trail network has always been, it's been kind of hanging over this project from the beginning. So I really would like to find out what the requirements are to know if we can entertain the idea of a, you know, a portion that may not be accessible.
I can look into that.
There's a big budget number, I think, too, to, you know, to work those cross slopes and grades to meet ADA standards. So, I mean, that's hard enough on a, you know, a small commercial site to meet ADA, let alone a walk through the woods. So.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think if I look into it and find that it doesn't the entire loop does not need to be. That would help, like you said, with cost as well, from a grading standpoint. And even, I mean, you could potentially provide different surfacing over there and save some costs. But I can look into that. I'll put that down on my list.
Lorena, do you have anything to add, or?
Well, I guess, I guess this is a conversation that I would probably have with Jim offline as far as the direction that I need to take with the grant application. The Land Water Conservation Fund grant application is due actually December 31st. I was going to get it in a couple of days earlier, but and that was going to be for a good chunk of the trail cost for the rubberized material, or if I can get a price for the granite, as you were talking about, Justin, then I could incorporate that in there. But I'm in a tight window, so I need to, I guess, have some direction as far as what kind of a grant application am I writing and how much am I writing it for?
Gotcha.
So I guess Jim,
We'll chat tomorrow.
yeah, we'll have that conversation and we'll come up with a plan so that we don't miss that opportunity.
Correct. All right. Does anybody have any additional questions for Justin or Brian? All righty.
Hey, before you guys go though, one of the items on our agenda is an update on the Roberts Mill Park project. Do you have any updates on that?
Yeah, I did. Thank you for bringing that up. I noticed that on the agenda, and Justin and I touched base earlier in the day. I think he's pulling something up here.
Yeah, I'm going into that folder here, just pulling up. I think the stuff I pulled down for.
Perfect. Yeah. So we had talked last about in the areas where there was the bank was eroding and we did not have space to push the pathway further from the bank. So that's namely kind of in that embankment area, up further on the street. Yeah, like in that kind of area. Using that ready block system, retaining wall, large concrete blocks. I know, we've kind of gone back and forth on how we would do that, both aesthetically, whether, we want riprap or some kind of retaining wall. We kind of settled on that ready block as being a good, compromise, and that it's, it's nicer looking than riprap, and a little cheaper than some of the more involved options. I know a natural solution is something that we've talked about with reinforcement and a vegetative, and I think Justin has something he's going to share on that. I think that's a great idea. I just know that in some areas, you want to still have areas for fishing, and that's not really conducive for that. And I guess the last item kind of wrenched the throw in this conversation when Justin and I were discussing this earlier today was a safety perspective, which I don't know. I hadn't thought about this before. I don't know if this group has, but where that path is very close to the edge of the pond, especially if the pathway is being modified and made new. Is there some type of fall protection that's needed that I hadn't really thought about before? That was a comment that Justin had that we may want to look into a bit. So, anything else to add, Justin?
Yeah, I thought more about the whole, whether or not there needs to be some sort of barrier or rail. So I don't think it's necessarily. We don't have any issue with fall protection per se, because that's just a vertical drop to like a surface, right? This is this is into water, so I don't think there's any like international building code or any sort of regulation that would force us to do that per se. I think it's just project by project best practice. So in my mind, we do a lot of bioretention areas, and usually if we expect more than 12 inches of standing water, we provide fencing around it and some sort of barrier to keep people from going in. But knowing that this is a fishing pond, the existing condition is, the pathway directly adjacent to the pond. The more I thought about it, the more I think the ready block segmental retaining wall without a rail or anything is probably okay. I mean, you'll be 2 feet set back from the top of the slope, I believe.
Right. And also looking at the stormwater regs as far as wet ponds go, it's not a steep slope once you get into the pond area. So it's what they would refer to as a aquatic bench in the stormwater manual, the state stormwater manual. So we are meeting that.
So yeah, I think we use ready block walls a lot on projects, and they're a good product. We use them for all sorts of different projects. So we have experience working with them. And I guess I know they probably gave this as a quick turnaround for your wall section here, but I was just looking at it deeper. I was a little curious how it would work with where the water line would reside here, and just Brian, you can talk more about this probably, but just the drainage layer for the and the leveling pad for the gravel and the drain doesn't seem like it would work in the application of adjacent to a pond like this.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I don't think they understood fully where it was being utilized.
Yeah, and that's sort of their generic, like you suspected. It wasn't necessarily project specific, but yeah, you're right. That would have to be tailored a bit. And I guess backing up a little bit is, the idea still would be to push the trail, the pathway back where we can. So that's that hatched area there at the bottom, and use the ready block in the area where the embankment is. We really can't do that in that area, like where that photo is pulled out. Yeah.
And then you had mentioned, I think the area along here might be a good example, and good potential solution would be to use some more natural solutions. There's already existing trees and vegetation in there, so it seems like we could utilize some kind of grade it out and utilize like live stakes. You can even I see riprap as being called out currently, but we could
that was an older call out when that was the plan. Yeah, it's a little bit.
We could even integrate it. I mean, we've used riprap, and it's hard to install, but you can use larger riprap, and you fill it with soil, and then you drive your live stakes in the voids between the riprap, so you get the immediate protection of the stone, and then eventually the live stakes grow, and you get more of a vegetative look. We've used that along the Delaware River, so it can certainly hold. But there's different geotextile solutions and organic matting and all sorts of cool products out there that give you more of a naturalistic look, but also have the power to control erosion issues. So I think looking at some of those might be good along the more natural edge of the pond.
I have a couple of questions. First of all, what is your estimated pricing for Reddit block, the retaining walls.
I don't have anything specific on that at this time.
I can ask them about that. They're pretty good to work with. I could try and give them a call and just see if we can get a price. I mean, this is just there's just a 2-block system here, so that obviously the shorter the wall, the cheaper it'll be. But it is a relatively long run along here.
Yeah.
Here, so.
And the other question I had was when you were talking about the riprap and the live stakes, when the live stakes are plantings?
Yeah, so they are they're cuttings. They're usually like a willow or usually they're black willows, and you cut a stake. Basically, you cut a branch about, I don't know, at least a foot or two, and you just cut one end at an angle. Make sure it's the angle that's facing downward, and then you literally just drive it into the soil about halfway while it's dormant in usually in like February or March, and they just go wild. It's a really cheap solution. I mean, you could even, that's something that a lot of localities do on their own, because all you have to do is have the knowledge to know what to cut, and then you just are cutting 2-foot segments and just driving it in by hand. I mean, a lot of times you can just pre-drill the hole so you don't damage the branch, and each branch is only maybe half an inch in diameter, so nothing large.
And I don't know if that's, in that area, there's trees, and those, I know, Justin, you haven't been to the site, but the trees are on the other side of the pathway. So I'm, if those, you'd have to select an area that, you were kind of, that the city was willing to have be a more natural area. Like, I know that area kind of near the low end of the pond there by that little parking lot where you've got that pavilion up in the top right corner of the screen.
Yeah.
That's an area that's kind of natural already, where the water leaves the pond. That could be an option. So I don't know if anyone, if the board is willing to kind of lose some of that, exposed shoreline area to try a natural solution in some areas and maybe not in others. I'd be curious for any feedback on that.
All right. I think as far as where you were showing where the pavilion, but I think when the bottom of the screen where you have the walking path and it kind of dips into like where there's other trees at, yes, right in there.
Mm-hmm.
Is that an issue to develop or no?
That hatched area was an area that what we had talked about before is just pushing the pathway back further from the pond.
Okay.
Because there's really no reason that you can't in that area.
Okay.
The slope isn't prohibitive. There's nothing really in the way other than those trees. But I think there's space between the trees and the existing pond edge to do that.
Okay.
I mean, we could even bump it on the other side of the trees for what it's the space.
Okay.
But you can see that's the area that's in that photo there to the right. That's probably the worst area.
That is.
And what's our timeline then looking for this?
Well, I mean, this is a pretty quick plan to put together. I just think we need to have consensus on what the approach is.
I do think we need to be careful how much of the fishing area we take away, because I think that is a popular part of this park. And I do think that area near the pavilion is a popular fishing spot because the parking is there.
Sure.
I agree with that, Beth.
Okay, that was going to be my next question is, are there areas that are the heavily fished?
So yeah,
Areas.
I think right there where you were talking about near that pavilion.
Mhm.
And then as you go up farther into the left there, kind of where that red arrow is up top, I think that's a pretty popular area too, that side of the pond there.
Okay, so it's more over here, not so much down this way.
Right, because that area down there kind of backs up to the soccer fields. So I don't know
Okay.
how heavily utilized that is for fishing, but I do know that the other side is
Okay.
utilized for that.
Yeah, and that's where the drain off is too. That kind of goes into that. So probably not many kids are around that area either. Yeah.
I mean, I think one approach here is, we got a better idea of what the cost is per foot of that ready block, and kind of see what the city has to spend on this. The cost associated with moving the path and repaving the balance of the path is something that we can estimate pretty closely. And then whatever's left is how much of that linear footage of ready block you can put in. Some area, it's just, I don't think for the budget that we've talked about, I'm concerned that we're not going to be able to reinforce the entire area of concern using that solution. And we might have to go with, it's either going to cost more money or it's going to have to go with a less expensive solution, kind of like what Justin was talking about. So, again, I think it just comes down to, as far as timing, it comes down to when we can come to an agreement about what approach we're using in which areas.
Okay, well, that sounds like a plan. Then I think once we get an idea of how much the ready block is going to cost, then I can reach out to a couple of contractors to get maybe an estimate on what what it would cost to repave the path portions that are good, and then move the portion that we need to have moved. And also considering that the basketball court is part of this project, so that'll have to be folded into the cost as well. That should be a simple job. Just fill the cracks with that overlay of asphalt and then the acrylic coating. And then we'll have an idea, I guess, at that point of how much of the ready block we'll be able to afford.
That sounds good. Yeah, that would be great, Lorena. And we'll kind of work on that ready block side and that retaining wall side. And if you can get some pricing on the paving and the pathway, that would be great.
Yeah. All right. I will do that, and then we'll be in touch, and we'll compare our numbers and we'll go from there.
Okay.
So let's say that happens within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Then, what do you think we can put together as far as getting the RFP out there? Do you think this is something that we can maybe have, maybe awarded so that we can get the work done, late spring, early summer?
Yeah. So that we started the RFP some time ago, and then just got, really kind of stuck on this erosion reinforcement decision. So a lot of it's done. The only thing that, and I guess Jim, what the planning commission, I don't think they need to see anything on this. And my permitting approach would just be to have the contractor apply for a grading plan through the county. And I think we'd still be under the disturbed area that requires the conservation district to review and approve it. So that's the approach that I think we could take, which is what all happened very quickly.
I agree. As long as we can stay under the disturbance thresholds, the planning commission doesn't need to see this. So yeah. it'll just be a matter of getting,
Okay. So I think putting the ENS back on the contractor and putting the grading permit on them would be the quickest approach then. So yeah, to get back to your question, Lorena, that could all happen. I think we could have a bid documents prepared, within, I know we got the holiday here, but this winter certainly, to get something out to bid and get through the bidding process so the contractor can be working in the spring.
Okay, great. Good news.
Does anybody else have any questions or concerns they want to address with Justin and Brian before they leave? Going once, going twice. All right, I guess you guys are off the hook for tonight now. So thank you so much for all your time. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks. It was good talking to you. Good night.
Good night. All right. So now we can go over the rest of unfinished business. We've already talked about Bollinger. So let's go into, I guess, the status of the MOUs.
They are all signed except for softball. And Steve Turner said that he was going to print that off and get that signed and scanned and emailed back. And I said that was perfectly acceptable. And he's promised he would have that done by the end of the year so that it'll be executed before the term goes into effect, and we'll be squared away for a year.
That's wonderful news. So the new baseball board already signed theirs as well?
Yes, they did.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. So we'll go on to, I guess, well, is there anything else to update on the Roberts Mill Park basketball court, or did we?
I think they covered all of that. So that's good news. And that was kind of what Jim and I had figured, that we would be able to get an RFP out over the winter months and get it awarded so that by the time spring rolls around, we can have the work started. Our fishing derby is scheduled for May 15th, I believe. Yes, May 15th. So that may be, again, just like what we thought we were going to be facing this past year. Do we have the contractor just wait and start after the fishing derby is over, and just put some cones up, for the areas that aren't in really good shape? And that's something that we can talk about further on as we go along with this.
Yeah, as we get closer, I guess we can make those decisions on how we proceed. All right. No, we already went through Bollinger Park. So I guess we need to do an update on the Taneytown High School Park Playground.
That is coming along. The equipment removal has been completed. The grading and dig out has been done. There's still a little bit more work that needs to be done around the edges, but the equipment itself, the new equipment, is due to be put in the week of January 4th, weather permitting. They said that they would work in the snow. I don't know, but they can't work in the rain. So we'll see what the weather does and if it cooperates, but that's really good news. So we're going to see some action on that. Now, they'll just put mulch down that week when they install, or whenever they install. They can't do the rubberized surface until the temperature increases. So the mulch will go down, and then in the spring, once the temperatures warm up, they'll come back out, sweep all the mulch away from the area that's supposed to be poured, and then they'll get that bonded rubber down. And then we can have our grand unveiling, dedication ceremony, whatever we want to do for that. So that's good news.
Well, that's exciting. It's actually happening. Very
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
Did you want to go on to updates for events for the new year?
Sure. Before I get into that, I just wanted to do a real quick plug for our decorating contest. All the contest entries are in. That has been published. It's released, and people are voting like crazy on that. So that's great. I'm glad to see that, and glad that people are getting excited about that. So that's wonderful. And we're going to have some winners announced on Monday, December 28th, the top 3. For 2021 events, I've been working a lot on Wine Fest. That is the first big one that's coming up. And the smaller ones like the Easter egg hunt and Memorial Day parade, I don't really have to line big vendors up for that or anything. So really focusing on Wine Fest. I've sent out invitations to 45 wineries, distilleries, and breweries, and 6 coffee brewers, roasters. I'm not quite sure what they're called, but that was a suggestion from the mayor to get an alternate beverage in there. And a lot of people love coffee. I'm one of them. So that'll be fun if we get some coffee vendors in there. So far, I have 2 breweries confirmed and a distillery. So if we get half of the 45 that I've invited, that would be great. That would be wonderful.
Right. When's your cutoff to let you know if they were interested? Or
I did not set a deadline.
Okay.
I'm just going to keep following up with them. I
Okay.
sent the invitation out a couple of weeks ago. So I'm going to wait until after the holidays are over, and then I'll start following up. And then they'll around the first of the year, I'm going to send out the call for the general vendors, the artisan and craft vendors, to get those lined up.
Right.
So
Okay.
we did, I believe, we'd already gone over all of the suggestions for the ticket costs and the vendor spaces. So I made those changes, and I think the cost is looking good. I think we'll be all right with covering all of our costs. The bands I'm starting to reach out to, as you all know, since I emailed you, solicited some advice there. They're definitely not as cheap as the bands that we've had in the past. So that's going to be a major expenditure. We're thinking probably 3 bands. Kelly, you had suggested like 2 smaller bands and then a big
The
band.
main event. Yes.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so we're exploring those options. I know Poison Whiskey is a popular one. They said that they actually already have a tentative booking for that date, but they're going to reach out to that party and see if it's a definite or not. And then they'll get back to me on that. But I've got a lot of other bands that I can, put in their place if they can't make it. So.
And that is scheduled for June 14th?
That is June 19th, Saturday, June 19th.
19th, sorry.
Yes, 11 to 4.
Okay.
And then once I get that kind of squared away a little bit, I'm going to start working on lining up Harvest Fest with about the same lead time as Wine Fest, about 6 months. So that one is scheduled for that one is that's October 9th, Saturday, October 9th. And that's 11 to 3. So we'll get that squared away, and I'll give you updates on that as we move along.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Lorena based off of the Anything about Wine Fest or Harvest Fest? All right. Looks like all the unfinished business we did at least touch base on. New business is budget considerations for next year. Well, 2022.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I want to back up a little bit
Yes,
on
sorry.
the events.
Yeah.
The 4th of July, the Independence Day parade and celebration of fireworks. We did put a deposit down. We booked a contractor for the fireworks display. So we locked them in. That's going to be Saturday, July 3rd. And that's going to be, an afternoon event, I believe. Have not yet coordinated the parade route with Chief Etzler or State Highway. So we'll get into those details later on. But that's going to be a pretty big one, I would say. Not as big as Wine Fest or Harvest Fest, but it'll still be fun. We'll have a band or a DJ, and we'll have some food trucks and, some fun activities for the kids and all of that. And like I said, topped off with the fireworks. That's going to be one to remember. That'll be really fun. So sorry. Okay. So, moving back on to budget considerations. I am starting to work on just putting together some tentative budget figures for fiscal year 22. Events, because of these big ones, I think the budget's going to go up on those. Hoping to be able to solicit some sponsorships, so that'll help cover some of our costs. Wine Fest, we should be okay on that. Our costs for that will be covered. The same I would hope for Harvest Fest, and also the 4th of July situation. So the next, I think another big line item that's going to increase is going to be materials and supplies and maintenance and repairs. There's a lot that still needs to be done in the parks above and beyond what projects we've discussed. Things from just like tree trimming and cleanup to, other things that need to be done, and also the TAA considerations. So those are going to be some line items that are going to be increasing. That we can get into the details later when we have the requests from TAA, because we'll need to take a look at those and prioritize them based on the budget funds that we can ask for. I don't know if anyone has any ideas or suggestions or comments about budget considerations. I think we all have copies of the capital improvement projects, so we know what's going on there. And then grant funding. I am digging for all kinds of grants and applying for everything that I can to help us out. So that's my update on that. Oh, did you have to rejoin, Kelly? Look, you're cloned.
I don't know what's going on. There we go.
All righty, you're back.
For now. All right. So what did I miss? Did I miss about next year's or 2022 budget?
Right. I was just talking about how the events line item is going to increase.
Okay.
How Wine Fest and Harvest Fest we should be able to cover based on ticket sales and such, and sponsorships, hopefully. And the other two line items that are going to increase are going to be maintenance and repairs and materials and supplies, just because there's a lot to catch up on in the parks that goes above and beyond what we talked about as far as improvement projects.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely, especially for events. Yeah, we need that.
Right. And I have only received, I think I've received, well, a couple requests from TAA members. So once I get all of those in, then we can prioritize those and go forward, because those are probably going to fall under maintenance and repairs and materials and supplies.
Right.
And I said I was just going for as much grant funding as I could find, just to help out.
Sure. And are we putting money in the budget for the pavilions to update those? Whether we need to buy that down the road?
Right. We will be putting money in there for that, as far as the paint prices, because that, I would imagine, I know, Daryl, you're going to try to organize the volunteer effort again, but I think we might need to, at least help out with the paint costs. That could be pretty pricey, especially since we're going for 3. Yeah, and whatever work we can continue to do on those, whether it's more concrete, repairing the roofs or whatever we need to do there. So yeah, if anybody has any ideas, suggestions, things that might need to be prioritized in the normal maintenance that would necessitate an increase on the budget line item, then we need to get that on the books.
Okay.
Y'all, excuse me, if I disappear, so my batteries are getting pretty low, we're seeing it. I'm going to be close.
All right. We'll try to get through it. Was there any additional budget considerations for fiscal year 2022? Anybody? Okay. So are you good with that, Lorena,
so
for now?
Okay. My deadline to get that into Barry is going to be January 31st.
Ooh.
So if anybody thinks of anything between now and then, email me, let me know, call me, text me.
Okay.
Get it in there.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Any additional reports from you, Councilman Hale?
No, not at this time. Just want to say it's been great working with y'all. We're making great strides coming into the holiday season. Y'all have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and a great New Year, and be ready to bring in 2021. But in any case, thanks for all your efforts, and let's work on the board. The board really, the members have to participate. This board is weakened if all members do not participate at the 90% tile. So we just have to keep it in mind. But anyway, thank you all very much, and take care.
Thank you, Councilman Hale. Do we have any comments or discussions from board members?
I don't have anything.
Thank you.
Yeah, neither do I. I was trying to just absorb a little bit of information today without, having a meeting in November and missing out in October. Just trying to kind of catch up and, absorb everything with, the Bollinger Park plans and, everything going on at Roberts Mill as well. But definitely looking forward to moving into 2021 and, hopefully pressing on and leaving some of 2020 behind us and, rolling forward.
Yeah, thank you so much. Do we have any public comments? Dan, do you know if anybody from the public? Right. I would assume that is a no. Oh.
Yeah, I do want to say happy birthday to Beth, because this is her birthday month, right, Beth?
It is. Thank you so much.
And Emmanuel is in October.
Yeah, a little late now, but thank you very much. Definitely appreciate that.
Yep. Happy birthday to the both of you.
Yeah, happy birthday.
All right. So the next meeting, it looks like, if I'm correct with that, it's going to be January 13th. And that would be with the Taneytown Athletic Association first. What time would we be starting that meeting, Lorena?
We'll do 6:30 as well. I think most of the members can join in on a virtual meeting. I think for the foreseeable future, will be virtual. Just to keep things safe, for all of us. So, yeah, we'll go ahead and start that one at 6:30 with the members of TAA, and then we'll roll into ours after that.
Okay. All right. So that would be January 13th, 2021. All right. And I guess that is it then. So before we go to adjournment, I just want to say thank you so much for everything. It's been a crazy year. I'm hoping next year will bring many exciting things to this town, and I'm excited about that. So thank you for all your hard work, Lorena. I really appreciate it. You've from day one. So you have really, really hustled, and I appreciate it so much. So thank you to everybody. May you have a great holiday season, and here's to a great new year. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
Can you hear me, Beth? Was that a motion to adjourn?
Yeah. Yep, I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Yeah, I'll second that motion to adjourn.
Okay, and I don't have you as far as in video, but I'm assuming everybody would be in agreement of adjournment. If they are, put your thumbs up or just say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, so with that, I'll see you guys next year. Thank you.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.